Welcome to today's webinar, Families Are Important, an early childhood workshop for families of young children with developmental delays and/or disabilities. This workshop is presented by Pacer Center with funds from a grant from the Minnesota Department of Education. My name is Julie Herzog, and I will be assisting today's presenters, Judy Sweat and Kim Kahn. Today's webinar is scheduled from noon to 1 and followed by optional question and answer, which will provide a brief overview of topics to help parents of children ages 0 to 3 in the early intervention system in Minnesota. During the webinar, all participants' phones will be muted. Participants can ask or submit questions. I'm going to advance our slides here for a second. Give me a moment. During the webinar, the participants' phones will be muted. Participants can ask or submit questions to the presenters using the question and answer feature, which is located in the lower portion of the webinar toolbar. Type in your question in the white box and click on the send button. The presenters will address the questions following the main presentation beginning at 1 o'clock. Other participants will not see the questions, and we will not identify the person asking the question. All participants were sent a copy of the presenter's slides at noon yesterday. If you did not receive a copy of the slides, please send an email to julie.herzog@pacer.org and julie.herzog, Herzog is spelled H-E-R-T-Z-O-G, at pacer.org, and I will send you a copy of those immediately once the presentation gets started. There will also be a link to evaluations will be sent after the webinar, and certificates of attendance will also be provided to all those attending. The webinar will also be archived to pacer.org. Today's agenda is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act recognizes the important role families play in their children's lives. Today's participants will learn about families' rights, roles, responsibilities in the early intervention system, how to make a referral, the evaluation process, development of the Individualized Family Service Plan, or IFSP, services in the natural environment, and how to resolve differences. At this time, I would like to introduce our presenters. Kim Kahn is presenting today, and she is the Public Policy and Early Childhood Director for Pacer Center. Kim is also the parent of a child with a traumatic brain injury. She provides technical assistance to families as well as developing materials for the Early Childhood Project. Our second presenter is Judy Sweat. She is the Early Childhood Coordinator at Pacer Center, providing individual assistance to parents of young children with disabilities and attending team meetings when appropriate. Judy also designs and presents trainings to parents and early childhood professionals regarding early childhood special education services and inclusive child care practices. It's my pleasure at this time to turn the presentation over to Kim. Thank you for attending.
Hello everyone and good morning, and thanks for participating in Families Are Important. My name is Kim Kong, and I'm actually the parent of a child with a traumatic brain injury, and like you, I went through this process with my youngest daughter when she's about 6 months old. I realize we're going to cover a lot of material, and certainly if you have any questions at the end, be sure to post those as well. So first of all, I just really want to start out with an introduction about Pacer Center. I don't know how much everyone knows about Pacer Center, but Pacer Center stands for Parent Advocacy Coalition for Educational Rights. It was actually established in 1978, and it's composed of about 25 different disability organizations. Funding for Pacers from federal and state grants, and from the federal funding side, it was a result of passage of the Individuals with Disabilities Act, which passed in 1975, that required that each state have a parent training information center to assist parents of children with disabilities like yourself. And also, as Julie mentioned, part of this presentation is actually funded by the Minnesota Department of Education So we can provide this to families who have children with disabilities from birth to age 5. We also have the Simon Technology Center and the Count Me In Puppets. I want to just mention those briefly. I'm not going to talk about those extensively, but we do have those available as well. And if you need any information about those, you can contact myself or Judy here at PACER. So as a parent, you are the most important person in your child's life. Obviously, you've been with your child since birth and you know them better than anyone else. And you share your child's joys and challenges. We all know parenting is a big responsibility. You make sure your child is safe and have good care. You watch to see that they grow and develop as they should be for their age. And, you know, this is a big challenge. It's even a bigger challenge if you know your child has a disability or you think your child is not developing like other children the same age. You know, it's really hard to know what your child should be doing and what to expect. You may feel alone and not know where to turn for help. But we hope this presentation will help you understand the early intervention process and how you can become a better advocate for your child. First of all, we want to talk a little bit about the Part C of the Disabilities Education Act. So you have a little information about this piece of legislation, which really started the Part C aspect that we're going to talk about. The Individual with Disabilities Act of 1997 was passed as a designated section called Part C, which specifically addressed special education needs for young children birth to 3 years of age. This came to be called Early Intervention Services, and the purpose of it was to reduce the educational cost to our society, including our nation's schools, by minimizing the need for special education and related services for infants and toddlers with disabilities. In our state, these services are administered through the partnership of 3 state agencies, the Departments of Education, Health and Human Services, and the Department of Health. And it's known as Minnesota's Infant and Toddler Intervention System, which is actually soon to get a more family-friendly name of Help Me Grow. Another aspect of Part C, or purpose of it, is to enhance the capacity of families to meet the special needs of their infants and toddlers with disabilities. So you're a very important part of this equation. Part C, we're going to talk a little bit about what it's composed of, the different pieces of it. First of all, you need to know that the early intervention system is family-driven. And this is actually different than the Part B piece of this because, you know, with Part C, it is very much family-driven, and you're going to be much more involved in your child's putting together the individual family service plan. So families are involved in the planning, services, and outcomes. And a key part of this is services are written into an Individualized Family Service Plan, or IFSP is oftentimes what you'll hear this referred to. So the IFSP is both a process and a written plan that includes resources, strengths, and needs of families. I'm going to talk a little bit about the process, and I know Judy's going to cover the written plan more in depth later on. But you know, it's important just to understand that the IFSP is a process and a written plan which includes resources, strengths, and needs of families to meet the developmental needs of your child. So, and in terms of like outcomes are the changes you want to work toward for your child and family, and can relate to any area of your child's development in daily or weekly routines. This could be anything such as your child's eating, playing with other children, or your family life, such as family outings together, etc. At the beginning of this process, the early intervention services are based on what we call an evaluation. An evaluation has a couple different components to it. It includes gathering information on your child's disability. So, you know, if you have any information about the child's disability or any information you want to share as a parent, you know, please feel free to share that information because that's always helpful. It's also going to consider your family's lifestyle and culture. Your child and your family's needs will be met in a way that respects your beliefs and values. And what the family thinks is important. Your hopes and dreams for your child should be encouraged, and you should really include those as part of the planning. The IFSP values the child and the family because they are intertwined. Another part of the evaluation is your team. Your team's going to be composed of you as the parents. Could be other family members. Maybe, if you're feeling a little anxious about the process, you might want to include a family member, even a close friend, in helping put together your child's IFSP. A service coordinator, and this person is going to be the person you're going to be working with quite a bit. They will be coordinating all the services for your child. And an evaluator. And this could be a host of different service providers. It may be an occupational therapist coming out to an evaluation. It may be any other kind of service provider as well. So that comprises your entire team and others. For instance, if you want to include a pediatrician or another professional, you might want to consider adding them to your team as well. The only thing we caution is that you check with the professional, see if they have any fees that they might charge for their time, and make sure they understand what their role is going to be at the meeting and what the meeting is going to be about. Eligibility for services. In Minnesota, we do have some eligibility criteria. The first is a child needs to have a developmental delay or disability in one or more of these different areas. So it could be just in one of these areas: physical, communication, cognitive, adaptive, social, and emotional development. Or if the child has a diagnosed physical or mental condition or disorder that has a high probability of resulting in developmental delay, regardless of a demonstrated need. So if your child has a diagnosis such as Down syndrome, low birth weight, anything that would indicate a high probability of developmental delay, these kids usually will qualify. The Minnesota Department of Health has a list, although not totally inclusive. But just to let you know, if your child does have a diagnosis, be sure to share that. Or the child meets the state categorical eligibility criteria. There are 12 other categories aside from developmental delay that include autism, deaf-blind, developmental cognitive disability, traumatic brain injury, and more. So your child may well meet one of these categorical eligibility criteria as well. So what kind of services are available? Well, assistive technology devices and services, and that means any item, piece of equipment, or product, could be acquired off the shelf, modified, or customized to increase, maintain, or improve the functional capabilities of children with disabilities. It can also mean a service that directly assists a child with a disability in the selection, acquisition, or use of assistive technology devices. It can include family training and counseling, home visits. Typically this is going to be someone coming to your home showing you how to do different things with their child and really kind of integrating it into their activities during the day or your family's activities during the day. But it can also include health services necessary to enable the child to benefit from other early intervention services. So if, for instance, you have a child who has some feeding issues, perhaps you might have someone coming out to help with those issues as well. Or medical services for diagnostic or evaluation purposes may also be covered. Oops. And nutrition services as well. And this can include conducting individual assessments in nutritional history and dietary intake, feeding skills and feeding problems, and food habits and food preferences, just to name a few. Occupational therapy, which includes services to address the functional needs of a child, usually related to fine motor skills, would be included. Physical therapy is that therapy related to the large muscle functions that your child might need help with, say like walking or some of those types of areas. Psychological services may be included as well. Service coordination will certainly be included as a person who coordinates the services and makes sure that all these different people or entities that need to come in and provide services are there at a certain time and that everything is moving along smoothly. And social work services may be included as well. Special instruction may be included. And let's see. Oops, there we go. And that might include the design of learning environments and activities that promote the child's acquisition of skills in a variety of developmental areas, including cognitive processes and social interaction. So that could involve curriculum planning, including, plan interaction of the child maybe with certain materials in a certain time and space, maybe with other children. It might also include speech-language pathology and audiology services and sign language and cued language services if your child requires that. Transportation-related costs. This could include the cost of travel, say like mileage, and other costs that are necessary to enable a child eligible under this part and the child's family to receive early intervention services. And vision services. This would mean, say for instance, for evaluation and assessment of visual functioning, including the diagnosis and appraisal of specific visual disorders, delays, and abilities. It can also be involved with referrals to services related to visual services and communication skills training. So how do I get started? Well, first of all, as a parent, you can call your school district, county human services, or public health office. Many communities also have a central place for referral. If you think your child might need help, there is a central number here in the state. It's 866-693-GROW that you can actually call and request that someone come out and evaluate your child. The first thing that they're going to do actually when they come out to evaluate your child is they do this kind of a short screening before they do a full-blown evaluation. So, what they're doing is trying to get enough information to see if a child meets an evaluation. You may be asked to sign a form giving your permission for the screening to take place. And based on the results, the professional doing the screening will make a decision about whether your child needs to be evaluated. If you disagree with the decision, you can ask for a meeting to talk about the decision and your concerns. You may also wish to call and talk with an advocate from a parent center. All screenings are reviewed by a team of professionals. Sometimes this is called an interagency review team. The team will include someone from each of the 3 agencies involved in early intervention. That would be education, human services, and health. This is usually an administrative level meeting, but you can ask to attend by calling the service facilitator. Some children pass the screening and their development is within normal limits. If you have a child that passes the screening but you'd still like to see that he or she receives extra help, the team should tell you about other ways you can find resources in your community. You can also ask that the team review your child's development again at a later time. Sometimes this means that your child will receive follow-up or that his or her development will be monitored or tracked. However, the family has the right to request a full evaluation. We talked a little bit about evaluation. There has to be a written parent permission. The team should work out a time that works for parents so they can come out and actually do the evaluation. And most often, a convenient place such as a home or daycare, and it actually varies with every family depending on your situation. If it's working parents, sometimes it will be at the daycare, or it can be at your home as well. And what it's going to include is the child's history, some observations, any medical reports, any test results, and then there also will do a family interview as well. Children who are diagnosed with a medical or developmental disability may move directly to evaluation. When a child has been diagnosed with a developmental disability, which we talked about before, a referral should be made within 2 working days. This referral is usually made by the medical professionals providing services to your child. So with the evaluation, what they're going to be looking for are skills that shows that a child knows and how she's developing. And it's based on a current level of performance. And it's just a picture of the child's development at that point in time. The team will gather the evaluation information and compare it to state eligibility criteria for early intervention services. If a child qualifies for services, then the team will need to further go on and develop the Individualized Family Service Plan, or IFSP. They have 45 calendar days from referral to actually get this completed. If a child does not qualify, you may ask about other ways to help your child learn. So certainly, they should be able to provide additional resources for you. At this point in time, I want to hand it over to Judy to start walking us through the IFSP itself.
Thank you, Kim. As Kim mentioned earlier, the IFSP is the plan and the process that will drive services for your child and your family. So first of all, the IFSP is a written document. It is based on the evaluation results. The IFSP will list the services the child and the family will need, and it will also state how services will be provided, when, where, and who will be providing them. One of the main components of early intervention services is the services of a service coordinator. That service coordinator serves as a single point of contact for the family. They will help the children and family to receive their rights, safeguards, and services that are available under the interagency program. And they should also have knowledge about infants, toddlers, and services and help keep the family going. So basically, the service coordinator will have knowledge and information about resources that might be available in your community in addition to the early intervention services that your family may benefit from using. The IFSP then, who would be involved in writing the IFSP and who may attend the meeting? First of all, the parent, other family members, and the early childhood teacher who would be involved in the family are mandated to be there. But in addition, the family may invite a child care provider. Oftentimes, if a child is in child care full-time, that child care provider may have some real important information about the child to provide to the team. As Kim mentioned earlier, if there's a doctor, a nurse, or a personal care attendant involved in caring for your child, the family has the right to invite them to the meeting as well. But as Kim mentioned earlier, it's also important to understand that if a family invites a pediatrician or a nurse or someone like that, and there is a fee attached for them coming, the family would be responsible for paying for them to be there. So a therapist working with the child, a Head Start teacher, an advocate, or others that the family feel might be important to be there. What kinds of services are we looking about in early intervention? The services are designed to help families enhance the learning and development of their child. So the focus is not just on the child, but it's really helping you as the family member or whoever would be the primary child or provider of care to know how they could do things within the child's everyday activities to enhance the learning and development of the child. They should assure that children participate fully in community and family activities. Some of the services are really designed to help avoid the isolation that a family may feel if they don't know how to take their child out in public or need some assistance in doing that so that the family can participate in community and family life. They also want to maximize naturally occurring learning opportunities. What this means is every day throughout the day of your living with your child, there's lots of times that you will be doing things that will be beneficial to your child, such as when you're bathing, feeding, changing, or playing with your child. The early intervention staff can show you maybe some different ways or tweak some of the things that you're already doing to enhance your child's development. When we talk about outcomes or goals on an IFSP, because we're talking about things that we want the child to be able to do in everyday activities, it looks a little bit different. In this case, we're going to look at goals and objectives. In this example, the outcome or goal for this family is to strengthen Sam's back muscles. During the family interview, the family probably indicated to the staff that Sammy was not able to sit up, and perhaps this was making feeding times difficult, or maybe even just being able to interact with siblings or other young children. So the goal is to strengthen Sam's back muscles. And in order to do this, Mrs. Brown, the mom, is going to learn 3 exercises that she can do with Sam. Now notice again that we're involving mom in this process because if we think in terms of how often mom or another primary caregiver is with that child, that's the person who's really going to make a difference in the life of Sam and in developing his back muscles. It's not going to be the early intervention staff who maybe come out once a week who are going to make the difference. The way that they make a difference is helping the mom or primary caregiver figure out things that you can do with your child to enhance their development. So Mrs. Brown is going to learn the 3 exercises that she can do with Sam that are going to strengthen Sam's back muscles, which will result in Sam being able to balance while he's sitting up. The outcome or the goal will include a timeline, whether it's going to be 3 months, 6 months, or a year, depending upon what the goal is going to be. And the ultimate is that Sam is able to sit up, and that would be Sam's outcome. The contents of the IFSP then are going to include information about the child's development that was gained from the evaluation that was done. It's going to include family information with the family's consent. Remember that the family interview and any information that you share with the team is with your consent, and you have the right to limit the information that you don't feel comfortable sharing. It's going to include outcomes for the child and the family, and again, because early intervention is focused on helping the family enhance the child's development, there can be outcomes on the IFSP for the family in addition to the child. Then whatever services are necessary to allow the child and the family to meet those outcomes. The dates and times of the services and who's going to be there to provide them, and then how long will the services be provided. Typically, an IFSP is written for a year to be reviewed every 6 months, so some services may be provided for a year, depending upon what they are. If they're short-term, some things may be accomplished within 3 months. It's also going to include who is going to pay for what service. Typically, any service provided to the child and family in Minnesota is going to be free of cost. However, if the family is looking for access to child care and is wondering about where they could access child care services, that could actually be a goal on the IFSP to learn where and who they should call to access those services. But of course, the family is going to be the ones who are going to be paying for the actual child care. There could be some other information. Perhaps the family wants to learn how to access medical assistance or the TEFRA program. That again could be an outcome for the family on the IFSP, but of course it would be the family who is going to do that. If it's family's private insurance that may be paying for a particular therapy, that might also be listed on the IFSP. The IFSP also has to contain the service coordinator's name and phone number because as the main contact for the family, you as the family need to know who to get a hold of and how you can get a hold of them. For a child, as a child reaches closer to the age of 3, the IFSP should also contain the steps that need to be taken to support the child's transition into preschool, or if the child is not going to be eligible for early childhood special ed preschool services, to other appropriate services within the community. There need to be the required signatures, and in this case it's going to be the parent and then a signature from any agency that's going to be providing early intervention services. In summary, as Kim mentioned earlier, the IFSP has to be developed within 45 days from referral to including the evaluation time. Services must start when the parents agree. So you have to sign that initial IFSP before any services will begin. And then the law states clearly that services must begin within 30 days of the effective date on the IFSP. The effective date is the date on which you sign and give permission. The IFSP then is reviewed every 6 months and evaluated annually. During that time, at those reviews, parents are involved in talking about the progress that the child or the family have made on the outcomes and changing or adjusting those services and outcomes as need be. As I mentioned earlier, the IFSP needs to contain information about how to transition to preschool programs. And in Minnesota, the law is very clear that the transition talk must begin at least 90 days before the child turns 3, so 2 years and 9 months, so that we can begin for a smooth transition to preschool programs. If a child is going to be eligible for Part B preschool special ed services, the IFSP must be in effect with services and placement in the least restrictive environment. In Minnesota, a child will be on an IEP at their 3rd birthday, and the parents must have signed and have that IEP in effect by that 3rd birthday. In looking at transition to preschool services, the team also needs to consider looking at what would be the term least restrictive environment. Basically what that means is the child should have access to typically developing peers. Research has shown that children learn skills by being with other children, and so the opportunity to increase a child's skills, communication, or their gross and fine motor skills is enhanced when they see the role models and other kids their age doing the things that they would like to be able to do. So in planning for preschool transition, the team should consider the need for supports and services in a regular school environment, and only after those supports and services are added in and the child is still not being successful should they think about services in a more restrictive environment. And again, that's why it takes some time to do that preschool transition planning, to give the parents opportunities to perhaps tour some sites and see what it is that the school is recommending for their children, and have an opportunity to comment when they're developing the plan. Once the IFSP is developed, the family will receive a written copy. They have 2 options. If they agree, they can sign and return it back to the school district. If they disagree, they can check the box that says that they disagree and ask for a meeting to sit down and talk about what are the areas of which they have concerns. And sometimes it can be something as small as they're not sure about the goals that are on there or the level of service, and this gives the family the opportunity to talk about those things so that ultimately an IFSP can be written that will make the family happy and really create the services that are likely to allow the child and the family to meet these outcomes. It's important to know that once that IFSP is written, and even once you've agreed to it, that the IFSP is not written in stone. Children change quickly, especially in those ages birth to 3. There's lots of things going on, and it's important that a family know that at any point in time, if they learn new information about their child, perhaps there's a disability that's not readily apparent at birth. As time goes on, the family learns some new medical information, or perhaps the child's development is not going along as the team may have expected. And so it's important to know that changes can be made to the IFSP at a shorter than a 6-month or yearly interval. The IFSP is flexible, and the parents can request an IFSP team meeting to revise it whenever they feel that it's necessary. When they call a meeting or request a meeting, they can contact their service coordinator and discuss their concerns, and then the service coordinator can make sure that the appropriate folks involved in delivering a particular service will be at that meeting. Some of the questions that a family may ask when they're looking at the IFSP as time goes on is your child making progress? As I mentioned before, whenever a goal or outcome is written into the IFSP, there's a time limit by which, in everybody's best guess really, they thought that the child or the family would be able to meet that outcome. And as time goes on, some children may develop sooner. And so that indeed what they thought was going to be a 6-month goal or perhaps a year-long goal, the child is achieved sooner than that. So it would be appropriate for the team to meet and talk about what would be the next step in the child's development, and is it appropriate then to write a new goal. For some children, maybe they're not making progress on the goal as everyone had anticipated. So then the next question would be, would it make sense if we made a change in that goal, would things get better? Perhaps we need to change the service provider, maybe we need to change the amount of service that the child is receiving, or look at providing that service in a different way. So those are all questions that a family certainly has a right to ask and discuss with their the service coordinator or other members of the team to make sure that the services the family are receiving is appropriate to allow the child and the family to make progress on the goals that are written in the IFSP. Some of the procedural safeguards that are guaranteed to families under IDEA would be that the family have written informed consent. So the family has to sign, again, as we said earlier, has to sign the IFSP before any services can be delivered. And also, if there's going to be a change or something else coming up, that the family be informed about that. Before the team could change any services to be delivered, they would have to provide information in writing to the family called a prior written notice, which would put the family on notice that they were proposing to make a change. And they would have to make, the school district would have to provide their reasons for proposing that change. So, and then at any point in time, the family could disagree with that. So written informed consent. Confidentiality and release of information. Again, as early intervention, as I said earlier, early intervention services are supposed to be multidisciplinary and collaborated among other agencies. So if it would be helpful for another agency to have information about your child and family, the team can discuss that with you. And if you feel it's inappropriate to share that information with somebody else, they would then ask you to sign a release of information. If your child is working closely with the medical community, or you have perhaps your child is receiving private speech therapy, occupational therapy, or physical therapy, and you want the school staff and your private therapist to be able to talk back and forth, it would be important that you sign a release of information so that they can talk with each other. In some cases, you may have to sign a release of information for the school staff and then also sign a release of information with your private therapist. The importance of this is you do not want to be getting conflicting messages from the various providers, and it's helpful if all the staff working with you and your child can be communicating on a regular basis so that you're working together for the benefit of your child and family, and so the family's not hearing conflicting messages and being confused as to the different approaches that people might be taking. If the family, for some reason, the family is not in the picture, the child has a right to be assigned a surrogate parent. This is an education term, and what it means is that there is someone who is able to sign and give permission for a child to receive special education services. You have a right to what's called an independent educational evaluation. As Kim mentioned earlier, once that initial evaluation is done or subsequent evaluations, if you disagree with the results of that evaluation, you can state that to the district, let them know that you do disagree and that you're going to request an independent educational evaluation. Now, in the case that maybe there was just a small disagreement with the evaluation report or the information that is reported, you could talk with the team and explain how maybe you see your child a little bit differently. Maybe you see your child doing some things that the team doesn't, or maybe the team thought that they saw some things in your child that you didn't see. You have a right to have that kind of information included in the evaluation report just to make it accurate. However, if the evaluation report, as you're looking at it and reading through it, you just say, you know, this is not the child that I see. Maybe the folks that came out and looked at your child saw him on his or her very best day. And on a general day-to-day basis, that's not the child that you see. That's the point in time when you may want to request an independent educational evaluation. And what that means is the school district will keep a list of folks who are certified and licensed to do an evaluation, provide that information to you. You would then make the appointment, go out and have that evaluation done. The school district pays for it, and then at that point in time, the results of that independent education evaluation are used in planning for services. You have a right to accept or decline services without risk. What that means is perhaps the team, when they're looking at your child, felt that your child would benefit from multiple services, and you as a family felt that having 2 or 3 people coming into your home on a regular basis is really more than you want to deal with it at this point in time. You could accept the services, perhaps maybe it's a physical therapist is going to, you feel that would be important to you, have that PT come out to your home on a regular basis and decline perhaps the services of a teacher, a speech therapist, whatever it would be. You have some control in this, and you can accept or decline those services without risk. And at some point in time, if you felt that now you were ready to have those additional services provided, you could ask then at that point in time that those services be added back in. So you can come and go in this system without any risk of your child ever being determined not eligible because you declined services. You also have a right to go through the appeal process, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail, but simply it means that you have a right to disagree with anything that the district is proposing at any point in time. When it comes to resolving differences, it's important the first step that you really want to take is going to the person who is closest to the problem. If you're feeling uncomfortable with an approach that a provider is taking and working with your child, talking about your discomfort, if something is not fitting in with your lifestyle, or you feel that there's something that's not clicking, it's sometimes easier to approach that person directly. Now, for some families, that's an uncomfortable thing to do. So if that provider, say, is not your service coordinator, then you may also maybe feel more comfortable talking with your service coordinator about your concerns. Perhaps someone is on a regular basis, one of your service providers is showing up late, and it's becoming disruptive to your family routine. You can talk with the service coordinator and express your concerns and working with the team to resolve that difference. If you feel uncomfortable talking with that service coordinator for whatever reason, you can talk with somebody else. You can always call here at PACER and talk about some concerns. As I mentioned earlier, a family always has a right to disagree with the proposed IFSP, or if your child is close to turning 3, the proposed IEP. When that happens, the family is entitled to what's called a conciliation conference, and that's automatically triggered when a family disagrees with a plan. Someone will get in touch with you and schedule that meeting, usually within 10 days of you indicating that you disagree with the proposed plan. And sometimes the people that will sit down and talk with you may be somebody who is a little higher up in the level of authority, because the school district really wants to do what is best for your child and family, and they want to resolve these differences quickly so that your child can begin receiving the services that he or she need. If you do go through a conciliation conference, after that conference is held, the district will send you a written memo of that conference so that everybody's on the same page as far as what was agreed to, and with hopefully the outcome being that there are some changes to the IFSP that will allow you to feel comfortable with it so that you can go ahead and sign it. If you go through conciliation and you're still not able to come to a resolution about what's going on with the plan, you would also have a right to go through the mediation process. Mediation is entirely voluntary. It needs to happen in a timely manner. What that typically means is that if a family is requesting mediation within 30 days, someone will contact them. Typically it would be somebody from the Office of Mediation, Minnesota Office of Mediation Services, to schedule that mediation. The beauty of mediation is that it really does provide you with an impartial, neutral third party who may be able to work together with you, the family, and the school district to come to an agreement about what it is that you're disagreeing with. Oftentimes it may be the level of service, the amount of time, or the people providing that service that the family may be in disagreement with. And so it allows the school team who's working with the family to sit down with the family and this neutral third party and talk about what their concerns are and try to come to some resolution. This is really an opportunity for the family to really feel like they're being heard, and then the school district to present their concerns and their reasons for why they're proposing the actions that they're proposing, and then sit down and really work out sometimes a compromise, but the result or the the expectation of mediation is that they will be able to come up with a win-win situation for both the family and the school. Mediation is at no cost to either the family or to the school district. It's paid for from the state. When the family and the school district do reach an agreement through mediation, there is a written agreement that is written up, and that agreement is confidential, only to be shared with the people involved who need to know or make the changes that were agreed to through mediation. If for some reason there is something going on where the family really feels a need to go to a due process hearing, using mediation or the suggestion of using mediation cannot be used to delay or deny the family's right to a due process hearing. Another way of resolving conflict would be to file a complaint. A complaint would be filed. Perhaps there are services written into your child's IFSP, your child and family's IFSP, and for whatever reason the services are not being delivered as stated, or perhaps you have asked the district to provide a service and that's not gone anywhere. That request has not gone anywhere, and you feel like your rights to prior written notice have not been given, and you have then a right to file a complaint with the Minnesota Department of Education. They have a department that deals with complaints, and in filing that complaint you would describe what it is that the district is doing wrong, or what you feel they're doing wrong, or what you feel they're failing to do. You would provide some facts to support the allegation. So perhaps if say it has to do with a service not being provided as written in the IFSP, you may want to include a calendar or a log that would demonstrate the days in which the service was to have been provided and nobody showed up to provide that service. So you'd have the facts to support the allegation, and then you also have the ability to tell the Department of Education what remedy you want. Typically, if it's a matter of a service that was to have been provided not being provided, you would ask for what we would call compensatory services, which basically says, I want them to make up the time that my child did not receive services. And so you can put that right in your complaint. If you feel like the staff are doing something in error, you can actually ask that the staff would be trained in how to do something according to law. And then you would also include a copy of your IFSP or your IEP, because the state would need to look at that to determine whether indeed there was something that the district was failing to do. Once MDE gets a complaint, you will send a copy of the complaint to the Minnesota Department of Education, and we can help you find that address. And then you also send a copy of that written complaint to your school district, so they're aware that you are filing a complaint, so that they may want to try to work to resolve that as well. Once MDE gets that complaint, they review both what you have to say, and they will talk with the district about basically what their side of the story might be. And then they issue a decision within 60 days, and that decision is in writing, and it will basically tell you whether or not as a family you prevail and indeed the district was doing something wrong, or if the district is following the law and providing services as stated in the law, then they would tell you as the family member that there was no error on the part of the district, and then things would proceed as they had been going along. The last opportunity would be a due process hearing, and this would be something very serious, that you felt that the district was really breaking the law and not giving your family the rights that you deserve under the law. You would file a written request with the district requesting that you go to due process hearing. Then the district is required to hold what's called a resolution meeting with you within 15 days of your request. And this is something new when IDEA was reauthorized in 2004. Again, the whole notion of this, all of these dispute resolution processes are to avoid getting to this point of hearing. And so the resolution meeting is sitting down with the district, you as a family, and saying, is there a way that we can resolve this without having to go to the extent of a due process hearing. And one of the reasons why we work very hard with you as families, as advocates, to avoid having to go to due process hearing is it can be very costly. The school district has attorneys. We would usually suggest that the family bring an attorney, which also means so you've got the expense of an attorney, you've also got the expense of having to take time off from work. So we really work very hard with you as families to avoid getting to this point. But if you feel like this is the only way, you can go through the process, and then once the due process hearing is held, a decision is usually made within 45 days, and that decision is issued in writing. Going back to the mediation process, typically when a family requests mediation, we would suggest that they set aside a day. Most of the mediations that I've been involved in are usually last 6 to 8 hours to give both sides enough time to really look at the issues and come to some kind of resolution. It's important to know that anytime you have concerns with your plan, that you can talk to either one of us, either Kim or myself at Pacer Center. This is our contact information. We really want to provide you the information that you need in order to develop a quality plan that's going to allow you as a parent to meet the developmental needs of your child and bring in the services and supports that you need as parents in order to do that. And so we're here at any point in time to help you through the process, to answer any questions that you have, recognizing that engaging in this world of special education can be a long journey, and we want to work early on to establish a good working relationship between you and the school district. For many families, my daughter was in the same school district for 21 years, so that those relationships that we had early on continued for quite a while. And so we want to help families get on that right track of establishing that working team, because once that team is established, it really works to the benefit of you and your family to get that relationship going. So we're here at any point in time to help you work with that, any questions that you might have. We want to thank you for viewing this presentation. As I said earlier, if you have any questions, you can contact Kim or myself. Our phone number is on the slide. And now we're going to take an opportunity to answer some of the questions that have come in.
All right, this is Julie. I just want to thank everyone who is attending, and just some housekeeping things, that this webinar will be archived at pacer.org under archived webinars. And also, once the question and answer section is completed, I will be sending out a link to an evaluation which will actually lead you to SurveyMonkey. If you could take a few minutes to complete that. And also we'll be sending out certificates of attendance. And anyone who needs my email is julie.herzog@pacer.org. Once again, we want to thank you for attending. And those of you that are continuing with the presentation, just a reminder about how to ask questions. You can submit a question using the question and answer feature, which is located in the lower portion of the webinar toolbar. And you can type in your question into the white box and click on the send button. And Kim and Judy will be answering and responding to the questions that have come in at this time. And they'll be going for a few more minutes. I'll let them make the call on how long the question and answer will last. And here's Judy.
Thank you, Julie. One of the questions that came in, is there a time limit to file a complaint? Typically, you can go back a year, but we would always encourage a family to basically file a complaint as soon as you have a concern about what's going on. Because again, when you're thinking about this, we're talking about kids now birth to 3, waiting a year of having things not go the way you think they should go. Having a service not be delivered that was written into the IFSP, or having a service denied that you feel that your child would need in order to really make progress in their development, a year is too long to wait. And so we would encourage you, again, whenever there's a concern, to address that concern as soon as possible, getting in touch with either us as advocates, talking with your team members, trying to resolve whatever concern that you have as quickly as possible so that your child is not negatively impacted by that issue not being resolved quickly. Another question coming in. A child had services for a year that are now being reduced to 2 visits per month. I think sometimes whenever a service is going to be reduced, or say the family had been receiving visits 4 times a month, once a week, and the team now is, for whatever reason, is proposing to reduce that amount of service, maybe going to 2 times a month. As I said earlier, they always have to put the reason for that in writing. That's called prior written notice. And that could be because the child has made such great progress that they feel with 2 times a month the child can continue to make that progress. I want to make it real clear that the school district, we all know that these are real tough economic times for families and school districts. We're all hearing in the paper all the time about cutbacks and things like that. Money can never be a reason for a service being reduced. And so if a district is proposing to reduce a service, they would have to give you an explanation that had something to do with the progress that your child was making, and make it clear that it had to do, the cutback in service was because the child was making progress or had mastered a goal and no longer needed that service. And if that's not clear, if you have other questions, you can feel free to email something else in. Next question, can a family request to have someone removed from the IFSP as far as coming to meetings? Again, that depends on who that is. And I would, if it's a matter where the family feels, let's face it, sometimes as families and human beings and school staff, there may be personality conflicts. People may just sense that something's not clicking. It kind of that's one of those things that I would talk with my service coordinator about, and talk about what is the concern. Sometimes in some larger districts there may be an ability to change a service provider. In the smaller districts there may not be anyone else available who could provide that service. So it's not a yes or no answer, but again, I would really encourage you to work closely with your team, your service coordinator or your early childhood special ed coordinator in your district, to try to resolve an issue having to do with personalities. Somebody asks, do we have or will have more information for parents of children older than 3? We have a number of different trainings having to do with IEP development and all the basic tenets of the laws under IDEA. There are a few that are available on a webinar that's available on the PACER website. And we look to be doing more of these webinars in the future, so stay tuned to the website, and if we do indeed develop additional ones in early childhood, we will let you know, much like we did for this one. This question has to do with mediation. How do parents get someone to mediate for them? Again, you can let your school district know that you're interested in mediation, and they will give you, so you can tell the district that you are interested. They may have you sign a form, and then they will have someone from the Minnesota Office of Mediation Services contact you to make sure, give you some opportunity to have input into the date and the time for mediation. Mediation is also held, typically is not held in a school building. They want to make it a place that's comfortable for a family, so oftentimes they will look for a location out in the community, maybe a library or something like that. So start with the school district. If you don't want to talk with the school district directly, you as a parent can contact us and we will put you in touch with the Office of Mediation Services. But eventually the school district is going to have to agree to mediation anyway. So I would encourage you to talk with your district and let them know that that's the route that you want to go. Someone also asked, do you do this before a complaint is written? Typically, mediation is going to have to do with trying to come up with a plan that the family and the school district can agree upon, where a complaint is typically going to be filed after that plan is written and something is not going according to that plan. So they're not mutually exclusive of each other. A complaint, again, would be filed if a service was denied or not being given. Mediation usually is going to be a place where you're going to try to resolve a conflict that's keeping you from getting a plan that you can both agree with. Another point, going back to the development of the IFSP, families are going to be asked for some information about their child's strengths and needs. And so when it comes time to communicating that with a team, basically it's not going to be as formal as that. The team is really going to sit down and talk with you, and that's somewhat what that family interview is about, and talking with you as a family, what parts of your day are going well and what parts of your day aren't going so well. And that's really when you kind of get to the information about your child's strengths and needs. So you may talk about maybe feeding is an issue. Your child's not eating very well. That would be a need. But maybe your child is real social, and so their communication is developing okay. That might be a strength. And so it's during that interview time talking about your daily activities, times of the day, things that don't go so well, that you really come up with the information about your child's strengths and needs. It doesn't have to be something real technical. Some differences as far as transitioning at age 3 to an IEP. I think the biggest difference is that, as we have said repeatedly, the IFSP and early intervention services are really developed as a support to the family to help them enhance their child's development. And so the services are going to be focused to a great extent on the family, teaching the family things that they can do in the course of everyday activities to enhance their child's development, working with the child and the family. Once a child turns 3, the IEP, the name IEP, is Individualized Education Program, and the focus becomes much more on the child. There are not family outcomes written on an IEP. Now, granted, the family is still essential to a child's education, and all the research shows that when parents are involved in the children's education, the children do well. So the family will still have the opportunity to talk about their concerns about the child's education. There will not be outcomes and goals for the family written into the IEP. So that would be the biggest change that I would see transitioning from an IFSP to an IEP. Can a district change or eliminate services as a child meets age-appropriate levels? In a word, yes. If you think in terms of what is early intervention all about, early intervention is to help close the gap for a child between what would be considered typical development and the child's developmental delay. So as a child moves closer to being on target or on time for a particular developmental skill, then there's really no longer a need for there to be early intervention services or early childhood special education services. So if a child meets and masters a typical developmental area, then that service could be discontinued. For some children at age 3, as Kim mentioned early on, one of the purposes of early intervention services is to eliminate or reduce the need for special education services as the child gets older. So in fact, for some children, the purpose of early intervention is met, and that child's development is moved up to a point where that child now is at typical age. So that child at age 3 or 4 may no longer need early intervention or early childhood special education services and really be discontinued from services. Again, before a service is discontinued, the team would have to provide some information to the family to support the fact that the child is now at a typical level. And if the family has any question about that, they can ask to see whatever data the school district is using to support the fact that they feel that that child is at appropriate level. The question goes on to say, do we need to have IFSP review signed after the review? I'm not sure. The progress, maybe they're talking about, I'm not sure what that question means. The one thing I'm thinking about is that there are progress reports and reviews, and so at that point, the review of an IFSP and the goals on the IFSP is not something that the parent would have to sign because that's not the plan. It's simply going over what's happened in the last 6 months, looking at maybe the developmental trajectory or the developmental skills the child has picked up and demonstrating that the child has met goals. So no, that would not be something that the progress report is not something that the parent would have to sign. The only thing that would need to be agreed on is that if there was a service on the IFSP that the team was proposing to discontinue based on the progress report and the review of progress on the goal, and the family did not feel or did not agree with that progress or determination of progress, they could disagree with that, and at that point in time, they would refuse to sign the new IFSP that proposes to reduce the level of service. I hope that's clear. Again, the IFSP is written annually, and it's that annual IFSP that the family would have to agree with and actually have their signature on. And it's important to know that when you get, and it's not the initial IFSP, if it's a subsequent one, again, there's that 14-day calendar period in which the family needs to sign and return it. Going back to the initial IFSP, if the family does not sign that IFSP, then no services can begin. They have to wait. Remember I said earlier that services cannot begin until parents have given written consent. If it's a subsequent IFSP and you as a family member get it in mail, or maybe your service provider drops it off at your home when they come for a visit, if there's something that you disagree with on that and you don't indicate that in writing, after 14 days that IFSP actually goes into effect. So it's important if on those subsequent plans, if you disagree with something, you need to let your service coordinator know that. Check the box that says that you disagree and send that back to the district so that, again, then you can go through that resolution process and try to come up with a plan that everybody can live with. I'm not sure, do we have any, that seems to be the end of the questions. Again, if I didn't answer your question clearly, if you still have concerns, you can contact Kim or I directly, and we will work to resolve any questions or concerns that you have with your child's plan. Once again, thank you very much for participating. We look forward to having you attend future workshops, and again, feel free to contact us with other questions. Thank you.